Some verses I'd like to look at here about rest, finding rest in the Lord. Psalms 4:8. In the peace I lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in the safety. Jeremiah 31:25 says, I will refresh the weary and satisfy the faint. Isaiah 40:31 says, by those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on the wings of eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Psalms 127:2 says, in vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat. He grants sleep to those he loves. You hear about people, I more whine that I'm too busy. I don't know about saying brag about how busy I am. I usually whine about how busy I am. And if anybody who knows me, I always complain how busy we are. And so people tend to say, look how busy. I got this, this, and this. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm all over the place. It seems like rest eludes a lot of us. We try to cram as much as possible in a day. We fall asleep. I'm going to tease my wife here a little bit. We fall asleep with our eyes square from staring at small screens, our phones before we go to bed, wondering why we're restless. If we do take a rest, we worry that people might think we're lazy. I have a hard time with that. So does my wife. We both have a hard time when we just, okay, it's okay. Well, no, I can't. I have to do this or that, or, I have to, we're worried that, people see us as lazy. Making time for yourself seems impossible. We do not even take time to listen to nature around us. Yet, one important aspect of taking care is rest for yourself, which we struggle with in general. If you look at just society in general, everything is 24 hours. We run on a 24-hour clock. I joke, 7-Eleven's open 24 hours. You could, work is constantly ringing in on our phones, which I'm glad I don't have my phone here, because if it was going off, I'd be wanting to look at it because of my work and what I do. And why don't we take a rest? I joke, even Jesus took time to rest. Jesus took naps. Seen a shirt that says, even Jesus took naps, and has the, him on the boat, which I'm going to read Matthew. It says, Jesus was so tired basically was tired. This is staging what's going to happen. He was asleep on the boat in a terrible storm, and the disciples woke him up. Fearing for their lives, Jesus didn't apologize for taking a nap. Rather, he reprimanded them and the disciples' lack of faith. Matthew 28:24-26. I'm going to read that. Suddenly, a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves were swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping, and the disciples went to wake him up, saying, Lord, save us. We're going down. He replied, you of little faith, why are you afraid? Then he got up, rebuked the winds, and it was completely calm. Even Jesus was upset. Hey, you woke me up for this? And if you're sleeping right now, I'm sorry if I woke you up for this. I think what I struggle with the most, I want to find rest in Jesus. I want to have time, which this is me kind of going on a little bit of a rant. I tried to my wife, she types everything for me. She's like, slow down, because when I talk, I get excited and I go talking really fast. And if you guys haven't noticed, I do that. And she tells me, slow down. Okay, I didn't hear half of what you said. I cannot type that fast. And so I think what it really boils down to, I want to spend time. I feel like just life in general is busy. I've got a job. I do stuff here. I don't prioritize spending time with God as much as I should. I want to spend time. I would like to spend time just reading His Word, meditating on Him, listening to music and spending time with him, just talking to the Lord. I used to do it as more when I'd go on walks. I would that or ride my motorcycle. And we were talking about back there. That's my time with the Lord. Sometimes I'll ride my bike or not motorcycle. I shouldn't say bike, but motor scooter, however you guys want to look at it. And that's my time where I'm just talking with the Lord, listening to music. It's distracted. It's kind of weird, but when we're rested though in the Lord and we take rest, we can be so much better to those around us. Jesus encouraged his disciples to take time out of their ministry and their busy schedules to rest. And sometimes I think for those of us who are here, who are in ministry, think that we need to be doing more and being involved in more. But if we're pushing ourselves too far, we're not going to be any good to anybody. We're going to be so burnt out. We're going to be so overwhelmed. We're going to get snappy. We're going to get short with people. We're going to have, our attitudes will be, oh, I have to do this, not I get to do this. And I think that's the balance of ministering and resting and realizing that that's a gift from God. Mark 6:31 says, "Then because there were so many people coming and going, they didn't even have a chance to eat. And he said to them, 'Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest.'" Sleep is a universal human need. It is necessary as breathing. But the invention of electricity made the light bulb so enabled us to routinely neglect hours of sleep for continued work and that's physically and mental activities. We can stay up late. We don't have to worry about being in the dark. We've got screens that are got bright lights that affect us. Studies show that people get between 1 to 2 hours less sleep they did a night than 60 years ago. I believe that. 1/3 of U.S. adults report they get less amount of sleep than recommended. How much sleep is recommended? How much sleep a person gets is impacted by several factors: age, genetics, activity levels, but most people need 7 to 9 hours of sleep average a night. I'm one of those people that needs more than 9. I will totally admit it. Like if I get multiple nights where I have less sleep, I actually, by the 4th or 5th day, I'll wake up with a severe migraine. I'm one of those people, if I run on less sleep, I have adverse effects to me. Despite what we tell ourselves, it is unlikely that we belong with a group that needs less sleep. People who are negatively affected by getting less sleep, despite those who might tell ourselves that consuming caffeine, which I used to joke and call liquid sleep, in a can, adequately can compensate for the lack of sleep. And I consume way too much. I'd hate to admit to say how much actually I do, but I can say way too much. It's like 300 plus milligrams of caffeine a day on average. As someone's I'm looking at my coffee right now. How much is that? But yeah, something I do, unfortunately. Should this concern any of us? Yes, it should. We shouldn't be living on caffeine alone. What is it? What did God say? We should live on the bread alone? No, we should be. I'm living on the caffeine alone, but yeah, right? Well, considering we spend a good deal of our life sleeping, which is a huge amount of our time we should be sleeping, why does the Lord require us to have so much rest? Why is there a significant amount of rest that we're required? It's unusual that the Lord didn't make us to be awake a lot. He required us to be asleep a lot. Almost half of our lives are asleep. If you really look at your lifespan, half of your life is asleep. One-third of our life's existence is in an unconscious state and unproductive. I looked at the wrong thing. Thank you, honey. She highlighted that part there. I was thinking half for some reason in my head. Rest is also calling ourselves to be humble and conforming us to the fact that we are limited. The need for rest reminds us of our limitations, weakness. Daily calls us to embrace the fact that we are human and not superhuman, which me and Jane were talking about the Superman complex, trying to take on too many things and thinking we can take on everything instead of relying that the Lord is in hand and taking control of it. We were talking about that last night. Me and Jenny were going, she's like, no, we don't need to talk about that. We can only resist the requirement to rest for so long. But while you can't escape the need for rest altogether, we can often resist this call to humble ourselves by reducing the length of time we regularly get rest. We can endure reductions in the of time in our lives for fairly long stretches, not just days, weeks, months, but even years. But this is important. We cannot do this without suffering some sort of negative consequences. There are times in our lives, especially if we have young ones, if we're taking care of, elderly, we have, BBS for a week, and then, flag football and movie night all in the same time span, we're going to lose some rest. But there are times in our lives that we will have those issues that we'll have to, neglect rest. Unfortunately, that's life. We're going to have those times in our lives when we do that. We weren't designed to work 7 days a week. We weren't designed to go 300, full bore all the time. Our body needs rest. From the beginning of creation, God put a rhythm to work and rest in place. God designed us to work for 6 days and then stop and rest and work on the seventh day of each week. And there are a ton of verses on the Sabbath. The Sabbath. Tons of verses about the Sabbath. About resting, basically taking a break. Taking time to rest in the Lord. Genesis is one of them, saying where God took a break after his creation. Exodus 23:12 says, 6 days do your work, but on the seventh day do not work, so that the ox and your donkey may rest, so that the slave born in your household and the foreigners living among you may be refreshed. Deuteronomy 5:12-14 says, observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God, who shall not do any work. Neither you, nor your sons, nor your daughters, nor your male or female servants, nor your oxen or donkeys, or any animals or any foreigners residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. Isaiah 58:13-14 says, if you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath, and you do as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by going your own way and not doing as you please and speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride in triumph and on the heights of the land, and the feast of the inheritance of your father Jacob, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Mark 2:27-28 says, then he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not the man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Son of Man is the Lord even of the Sabbath. Hebrews 4, 9 through 11. Then remain the Sabbath for rest, and the people of God, for anyone who enters God's rest will also rest in their works. Just as God did from this, let us therefore make every effort to enter into rest, so that no one will perish by a following example of disobedience. We have to realize, that resting is also, God asks us to rest. It's a commandment. We are not bound by the law, but we still need to follow the law. And I don't say devil's created the lie that we need to go 24/7. I think he uses that as a tool to keep. It's easy for us to avoid certain sins because they're prevalent, you see them, but time management, time use, resting in the Lord, not resting in the Lord is a sin. And I think we have to realize that. And that was something I'm not thinking, me not resting, me not taking time, me not, doing what I'm supposed to realizing that's a sin. I'm not honoring God if I'm not giving him 100% of my best. And being able to do that for us sometimes it's hard, especially for someone who like me that will, like I said, see a need, feel a need, I'll just jump in and do it. Sometimes even if I don't even know how to do it, I'll figure it out and I'll do it anyway. And I think taking a rest is God honoring. And I think that when we do that, the Lord delights in that. And I think we struggle with those things. At least I know I do. I hope some of you do, because I feel like weird. I'm just preaching to myself, but that's okay. I tell Jenny, I think I really do need Jenny to make a shirt that says Jesus took naps, and so it's when we physically rest, our mind and our spirit can rest in the Lord too. I don't know how I'm going to put it. I think that when we fill too much of our time with idle things, with being busy for busy's sake, that's not honoring to God. Yes, we need to be about his business, and I want to be, like Charles says, we need to be about business when he shows up, but just doing stuff to do stuff isn't God honoring at all. As we read scripture, it points to rest. And we don't need to feel guilty about resting. And I have a hard time with that, and I know my wife does, and I know there are a few people here that feel that way. When we rest, we feel guilty. But we need not to. We need to take time off to rest. God shows time and time again, come on, God rested on the seventh day. If it's good enough for him, it should be good enough for us. We should take time to rest, to refresh ourselves, because if not, we'll end up getting grouchy and short-tempered and probably say things we don't mean because we're angry or upset or frustrated or seeing things not correctly. It's like I said, it's one of the 10 Commandments. We need to take the day off. We don't need to keep striving for productivity. We need to rest fully in him. We need to rest in the fact that he created rest. I said, this is something I definitely struggle with. Our modern world has so many distractions to keep us busy. From emails from work, I'm guilty of that. Like, everyone's like, why do you answer emails when you're not at work? I don't know, because it's easier for me, or I forget about it, I think that we can be busy doing other things. We can be, outside activities of, there's all sorts of things we can do. We can only fit so much into 7 days. Really, if you look at what the Lord says, that's 6 days. So we're trying to cram 6 days. If we actually, all of us took a single day to rest, may not be the same day for all of us every day, but could you cram 7 days of stuff into 6 days, what would your life look like? That would be insane. Let alone trying to fit 8 days worth of stuff into 7 days, which a lot of us do. I know I do. I try to fit more than 7 days worth of stuff into 7 days. Sometimes up till midnight. I know, poor past. And then having to get up at 5 in the morning to go back to my rail job, or what's it? No, me and Jenny were joking. Whoops, I dropped this. Put it in my back pocket. I joked that this is my regular job, and then I go to my other job at the district, and so us being a part of God's people, we got to do what God is telling us to do, and that's taking a rest. Time after time in His Word, He says to take a rest, and we need to look at that and actually realize us not resting is a sin. Like I said, I'm preaching to myself here because I know I can see a bunch of people already looking at me, smiling, saying, "Yeah, you're right, Adam." And I hope that we're not using this as oh, well, he doesn't want to do this, or he doesn't want to do that, or they don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. But we're using it as realizing it's God honoring, that if we reflect on what God did, and even, I said, Jesus took naps, I believe a lot of us, because we don't take breaks, we get burnout. Yep, you can't work. Lady here who's the nurse, people that are in the medical field understand that if you're physically worn out, you'll be mentally worn out, and your brain won't function right. You'll have less being able to do stuff, to be able to work. Exactly. And we got to realize, too, it is part of a spiritual battle. Satan is using everything he can throw at us to keep us busy, to keep us not focused on the Lord. But when we take time to rest and rest in Him, our anxiety, our overwhelmness, our relationships, our mental and physical health will be better, and we'll have more balanced lives with it. I think we've forgotten how to rest, really. I think with the way that Satan has influenced our world, that we realize that, we don't need to take a rest. And what is, I think Pastor Bob says, what is the 11th commandment? Thou shalt be balanced. I think we're not balanced if we don't rest. That's speaking to myself. I'm sorry, I am, yes. And so I'm feeling convicted by it. Here are some takeaways from what the rest is. We've read a bunch in the verses in the Bible. 1, rest isn't lazy, it's holy. Jesus rested, and He invited us to do the same. The Sabbath isn't a burden, it's a blessing. Rest is an act of faith and trusting in God's provision. Make no mistake, we are in a daily spiritual battle that is not without bumps and bruises. The enemy has targets on our backs and wants to kill, steal, and destroy, and separate us from God. When our spiritual and physical energy is low, we become open to the schemes and lies of the enemy. And it trickles down in all aspects of our lives, affecting not only us, but our families. It is also easiest to fall into patterns of sin without our alignment with God. And when we rest in Him, when we rely on Him, like I said, all aspects of our lives will be a blessing, not to just us, but to other people. So when we're resting in the Lord, we need to realize, 1, it's not wrong. 2, it's okay. And even Jesus rested. And God rested on the seventh day. And I think for us here, I said I like to do a mirror of myself and something I struggle with. But, I think we all struggle with that in general. I think our society has drilled it in our heads. We need to be going all the time. We're, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year going nonstop. And it's totally counterculture to rest, to stop, and just pause on the Lord and rest in Him. I'm going to have the worship team come up. If you mind singing Waymaker again, please. In conclusion, we need to remember resting in the Lord is not a bad thing. For some of us, we need to force ourselves to do it. Resting in the Lord is not only a commandment, but resting in the Lord, or not resting in the Lord, is a sin. We need to remember that we need to take breaks. God took a break, and even Jesus took naps. As the worship team's coming up and singing, they're going to be singing Waymaker. We don't do it too often here. I know Charles comes up, and if you want to speak with him, but we're going to open up these altars. If there's something right now that's going on that you need to have one of us pray for, I may have Charles come up here, stand up here if you need prayer. We're going to have these altars open to be able to pray while they sing. I don't know what's going on in people's lives right now. I know that ours is busy. I know a lot of people have a lot of things in their lives going on. But while we're singing, I want to have these altars open to pray. If you need someone to pray with you, if you like one of the ladies, I know Kristen wouldn't mind stepping in. But remember that this place is here for you to rest in the Lord.